So I think since coming back to Australia, it's given me a little bit more clarity on, the overall mission at hand. Um, it's kind of different to the mission that I was on in Cambodia. The mission in Cambodia was more about providing education and developing educational resources and developing kids who lack education as a result of the genocide 40, 50 years ago, which has had a knock-on effect on the education system there. A lot of the resources were wiped out during that genocide, and their education system is so much further behind than a lot of other parts of the world. So that was the main focus over there. But since getting back here, it's given me more clarity on like a bit of the overall mission at hand. And here it's more about mental health and emotional health, I would say. That's kind of my mission here. And I'm still in the process of, making these comparisons between the people who I spoke to over in Cambodia, who come from poor backgrounds, who some may live in villages, rural parts of Cambodia, compared to the people here, mostly around my age, because these are the people who I resonate with the most. And in my throughout my conversations with the people of Cambodia, who are in their 20s, I found that a lot of them they couldn't really comprehend this whole the whole concept of an unhealthy emotional and mental state that we experience here. And it's interesting because this is where my mind went this morning. I remember hearing about I was listening to a podcast, and whoever was speaking was talking about the whole notion of having purpose in your life. And I think having purpose is something that heavily correlated with mental health and emotional health. So in this podcast, they were talking about how purpose isn't necessarily something that makes you happy. I would say happiness is just a byproduct of having that sense of purpose in your life. If I compare some of those kids back in Cambodia who are around my age, in their 20s, their life circumstances, it wasn't necessarily happy. They came from poor backgrounds, and some of them were working 18-hour days, plus educating themselves, plus going to school, plus volunteering their time on the weekends. And it doesn't really sound fun. And they'll tell you themselves they struggle a lot financially and emotionally as a result. That working like that takes a huge toll on someone, and it's not necessarily those circumstances. Just because that gives them a sense of purpose, it doesn't necessarily mean that it makes them happy. Going back to this notion of purpose, though, I heard in this podcast that purpose was more about being attentive to your environment. So less about being happy, less about pursuing your passions or whatever that may be. It's more about being attentive to your environment. And when you're brought up in an environment like that, where your mother or your father and your brothers and sisters are relying on you to go out and work, everyone is required to go out and hustle to put food on the table. That requires this deliberate, intentional, taking action in a deliberate and intentional way, and that requires being really attentive to your environment. Whereas if you compare to here, a lot of us are raised in abundance, and I feel like we're less required to be deliberate and attentive to our environment, because there's a little less going on, and let's say you're brought up in a privileged through a privileged background, and you go to university and you join the corporate world or whatever it is, life can start to become sort of robotic, and that requires less of that deliberate, intentional action that's being taken. So as a result, you become less attentive to your environment. So yeah, that's kind of what I've gathered so far since being here, and that the whole concept of emotional and mental health is something that I really want to focus on in Australia, in the Western world. And although our circumstances are so different compared to Cambodians, and they always will be, we have all of this new psychology and all this neuroscience information that's coming out, and a lot of it is actually proving what we once thought was wrong, proving what we once thought was right, and it's proving it wrong now. Something as simple as just a plain thought in your mind actually has it creates incomprehensible change in your body, and in your mind, psychologically and physiologically. So as we learn more through our science and through our psychology, we're starting to change our perspective, change our views, and this is all the information. I can go into a little bit of it, but thinking that we were once, your mind was fixed and you cannot change your mind, that's being proven wrong. And we're neurologically speaking, we're finding out that the mind is more plastic than what we once thought, and it can be primed and amended in order to achieve better emotional and mental health. So I think bridging this gap between the circumstances in Cambodia and here, and it's I'm finding it hard myself, because going there and living there and hearing the stories of people's lives there, and then coming back here and trying to adjust to this new kind of environment, and the people, everyone's wired so differently compared to over there. You have to remain as objective as possible, and that's not really easy. But it does make it easier that I come from from Australia, and so I can have that extra level of empathy, especially because I've struggled mentally and emotionally in my past, and I've struggled to find that sense of purpose in once before, and that really took a toll on my life in general. So yeah, it's coming here and trying to adjust back into this orderly, luxurious life is a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time it's enjoyable, just observing the people, and it's giving me more of an understanding, helping me understand what life is like for people here, and that really helps me as well for myself personally. So I'm going to continue to make these videos. This is Philanthropy is not going to stop. Just because I'm not doing my humanitarian work at the moment, that does not mean that my mission stops. My mission will continue. This is a lifelong mission, and it will continue, and I want to see you stay posted. Thank you.